Welcome to the Executive Forum Speaker Series from Purdue University's Daniels School of Business. I'm your host, Dave Randich, and I'm a lecturer here at the Daniels School, teaching undergrads on the West Lafayette campus. Executive Forum brings students and industry leaders together. Our speakers inspire our students and the public with insights on trends in their industry and guidance for students as they develop their business leadership skills. Today we welcome to Executive Forum Aaron Gilbertie, co-founder and CEO of Krishi, a biotech startup. Come along with us as we build the future of business.
Aaron, we're grateful you're here today with us. It's terrific to have a real live entrepreneur on stage.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And I know you're pretty familiar with the Purdue campus, so you live semi-local and you get around here a lot?
I do, yep, and enjoy the campus, and I've had two children graduate from Purdue in different disciplines, one presently here, so yeah.
Terrific.
We're Purdue through and through, it seems.
Terrific. So can you set the table for us before we get into the entrepreneurship and the innovation? If you could just explain to us your target area in the market where you're innovating.
Yeah, so generally my career has been in animal health and animal sciences. And so pretty, I'd say, deep domain experience across the board in different roles. Where our company is really focused is initially on livestock innovations to help livestock producers make better treatment decisions. And also we have some companion animal products that are really focused on improving treatment outcomes with dogs and cats.
Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about animal sciences, of course we're in the business school here, but we've got a terrific ag school at Purdue. When we talk about animal sciences for you, what's the scope of that?
Yeah, it's many things, right?
Yeah.
So let's say practically speaking, in something that we're working in right now, bovine respiratory disease. Cattle have been in the news a lot lately. Beef prices are quite high. There's some fundamental reasons for that.
And we're going to get to that.
We will, yeah, that'll be fun. But what we do is we help bovine respiratory disease. It's a complex disease. It's got viral and bacterial components. Usually there's a virus that affects the lungs, and then you get secondary bacterial infections, and ultimately it can kill these animals. It's pretty serious. What our technology helps them do is pick an antibiotic that's more likely to work. In fact, about 40% of the time that these animals are treated, they relapse and they don't get better. They have to be treated with something else. And 90% of that time, they have to be treated with an entirely different class of antibiotics. And so if you can, that's real money. You talk about economics of production and people's livelihood. When you have a disease that's as prevalent as bovine respiratory disease and you're unable to mitigate it early, it's a real financial impact on the industry. And so our technology allows them to do that better, keep these animals healthy, alive, and part of the food production system.
And we know from humans that antibiotics, we can develop a tolerance. Same thing in the cattle industry?
Yep, similar mechanism. These organisms, they like to survive, and over time they develop resistance patterns. And depending on the organism, those can be transferred from organism to another through plasmids and other mechanisms. So it's a fascinating industry. It's a fascinating problem too, because traditionally in livestock, when we look from a policy standpoint, what we see is emphasis on the reduction of use of antibiotics, and typically that's always in retrospect, right? We used fewer and fewer of these classes of antibiotics, and while it's a measurement, in fact it may not be a useful goal in some ways, because it doesn't necessarily take into account what's effective, doesn't take into account animal suffering and animal husbandry, and it also doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually improving anything. Mm-hmm. And so what our system can do is actually give you within an hour, give you a real-time assessment of what your treatment guidance, what your treatments should not be, and so you can pick things that be more effective and not further contribute to the issue.
So it sounds like there's economic benefits, but also in terms of anti-cruelty and being better stewards of our livestock.
Yeah.
It reduces suffering of the animals, it sounds like.
Yeah, and farmers and ranchers honestly are sometimes get I'd say general society may not have as good opinion of their practices, but in fact, farmers and ranchers are among some of the best stewards of our land and resources in the world. Yes, they're motivated to have a sustainable business, but they're experts in these systems and keeping animals alive and healthy and producing in a way that's affordable for all of us.
Preserving the environment.
Preserving the environment. I mean, there's some of the original environmentalists,
Yes.
farmers, in fact, with practices. So when we launch a product like this, there's some groups, where the antimicrobial stewardship is top of the list. These would be governmental groups and academic groups and special interest groups that have this it's an important thing, don't get me wrong. And to your point, that's important as part of our story and what we're doing, but equally as important as the actual practice and the financial impact, because that's where the decisions are getting made today, is can we positively impact their business?
Sure. So Aaron, tell us exactly what your product does. What does it look like and how do they use it?
I should have brought one, actually.
We like show and tell.
Show and tell. So there's two components. It's called Sherpa. So we have Sherpa Vision and Sherpa Chip. We say Sherpa because it's sort of this guide through unfamiliar terrain, a trusted guide, right? The two components, there's a reusable hardware component. It has really three main functions. One is it heats the chip to the required temperature. It does imaging and analyzes it and then reports it locally on a screen, but also pushes it up to the cloud so it can be either distributed more broadly to people that might need it in the field or analyzed later. The real magic, and it's a cool device, so it's about
So are we
9
looking
by
at
9.
blood, or what are we analyzing here?
The sample type depends on what you're looking for.
Okay.
So in the case of bovine respiratory disease, it's actually a nasal swab that we've all seen them with COVID, right? We've got them stuck
Cows
up
have to do it too, huh?
through a window, through a drive-through or something. Very similar. It's about like this. If a veterinarian's taking it, they might do what's called a deep pharyngeal swab, which is just a longer version of that, maybe a little cleaner sample. And then the second component is what we call the Sherpa chip, which is a microfluidic device. When I say chip, it's not a microprocessor. It's basically a injected molded piece of plastic, but embedded in there are 20 different little reaction pads. And what that allows us to do is each one of those reaction pads has all the molecular reagents necessary to do the molecular test. So whereas before, you would send this to a lab and you'd have a proper technician with a lab set up and you'd have to purify the sample and all this. This allows you to simply inject the sample. In this case, the swab, we put it in a little bit of water to dilute it out, and then goes into the chip. The microfluidic device meters out exactly how much needs to go to each one of those pads. All the reagents are in there, and then you put it on the Sherpa Vision, and an hour later, then it gives you the result. So it could be done used for pathogen identification as well. We've decided to go this path for a couple of commercial reasons, but it's unique in its approach.
Fascinating. And Aaron, who is your customer? Who are you working with exactly?
Yep. So in this particular early first product, we're dealing with cattle veterinarians. So they're also quite unique in that they're segmented. So some of them are focused on calves. So these would be calves that predominantly come out of dairies and then are raised and then put into either feedlots or into background operations. And then we're also dealing with people that own feedlots. Actually, somebody that's a big part of our team. He's part-time on Purdue faculty. He's also a software engineer. He also owns a cattle feedlot here in the state of Indiana.
So just for non-ag people like me, what's a feedlot?
Feedlot is where you have an area that's penned, and you have cattle in it, and you feed them predominantly grain-based diets.
Corn, I suppose. And
Corn, so high energy. The goal there is to get them to grow and to produce high quality, well marbled meat that the consumer demands.
So you're talking to the vets, the large animal vets, it sounds like,
Yep.
and the producers.
Correct.
And when you're having that conversation, you touched on it a little bit, but when you're having that conversation about how your product can help them
Yep.
economically and so forth, what's your main message to your clients?
So in this case, they know the problem, right? Because this problem actually started with them. We didn't dream this up. It actually came from them.
And how would they describe the problem?
Mortality in this case. Okay. So, you know, the worst thing is when you have an animal that you've not only bought but reared, so you have all these feed costs and labor costs and yard fees basically that you've put in, and they don't make it to harvest. That's all sunk cost. You don't recover any of that, right? Mm-hmm. So they understand the economics. It's more pronounced now than it's ever been. And so if you can keep more of them healthy, and the ones that are unhealthy, get them treated suitably early, the better off you are. The problem with that disease is as it progresses, the lungs, they don't really fully recover in some cases if they get too far, right? There's sort of a scarring and an inflammation that occurs, and so you really do have a more of a morbidity impact in that case, where maybe they don't die, but from an economic standpoint, it's almost worse because they don't grow in an efficient way, and
they
keep eating, right? And they don't convert, and so it's not a great situation there. But mortality right now, because of the market, is a no-brainer for can we keep more of these animals alive by virtue of using a more intelligent way of doing it?
Mm-hmm. And so, Aaron, I think what's fascinating about what you do is you thrive inside of the ecosystem of innovation here at Purdue, working with professors and inventors who are getting patents. Can you tell us about that whole world and how that works, the networking?
Yeah, it's an important part. And I'd encourage you guys as you're developing your careers is to find connectors. There's a handful of people in my career that, they know everybody. They're just really interesting people. They know everybody, and they're the people that I reach out to, and I'm like, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure I know the person that knows, right? And so I can reach out to them, and there's different ones for different areas, but one of these connectors was introduced to me to Dr. Verma here. He's a professor at ABE who had developed this foundational technology, and so that's who connected us. And it's interesting because there's a lot of technologies that are developed, and figuring out if they have a commercial fit and what the applications are aren't always obvious. Sometimes they are from the very get-go because they were designed for a purpose, but sometimes, like this, is a platform technology. And so actually selecting the first products that you want to go after and why is as important probably as it's almost harder, right? You have so many options. You got to narrow it down. Okay, what can you do to launch this business in the most straightforward way to get you to the next inflection point or the next success marker? And that's sort of where the strategy happens. And working with Dr. Verma now several years, and so it starts with a discussion. And it's a conversation. You see how people mesh, and if your visions are aligned, and eventually we decided, we're gonna tackle this together, and we've had a lot of fun doing it.
So the reason I'm fascinated by that is I have a lot of students who have entrepreneurial ambitions, or they may be students and they're thinking about how to start a business. And you've just described an ecosystem where we have all this innovation and all these ideas and these patents coming up.
Yep.
Maybe they're being developed by professors who have a general idea of the market but don't know how to commercialize it. You know the technology, you're on the commercial side.
Yep.
And then you got these folks in the middle, these connectors, who are in that ecosystem and helping people with ideas link up with smart people who have the commercial ability, and away we go. Because it sounds like what you're marketing, you did not invent, but right. You and the inventor are partners, and you're the commercial entrepreneur.
Correct. Yeah, that's right. And what we're commercializing now is a variation of what we started with. It's not it's not actually where we started, right? So it's some of those nuances are quite important for how you actually introduce a product. The other component I'd add in there is basically the technology and commercialization department. Universities have these. They're problematic for a lot of universities from the standpoint of filing patents. Prosecuting patents is a very expensive venture. And so what these offices do is try to find commercial partners who will pay for these fees, right? Because without that, what ultimately ends up happening with these departments, universities spend hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars every year prosecuting patents that they don't have a commercial partner for. So a lot of these universities now, and they'll file maybe a provisional patent, and then it's incumbent upon the inventor and whatever support he or she can garner from the university to find a commercial partner to take those patents forward in actually prosecution. Otherwise, they may let them just die on the vine because there's not a commercial partner to support the effort.
Fascinating. So back to beef prices, we always like to talk about current events and how they relate to your industry. And so we're seeing beef prices pretty high at the moment, even causing a little political flack. What's going on there?
Well, there's about a 10-year normal cattle cycle anyway. That's they teach you about when you take an animal science beef course. But on top of that, a few years ago, we had a pretty significant drought in the Southwest, and the economics were not as profitable as they are now. And so, if you don't have hay, if you don't have pasture to feed cows in these cow-calf operations, and the prices aren't high enough for you to go buy hay, that's usually pretty high priced, then you have to send those animals to harvest, and that's ultimately what happened. Was a drought sort of led this cycle. It was timing wise kind of on the bad side of the 10-year cycle, and so now we're dealing with. There's also been some transformation in the industry from the standpoint that there's technologies that are being introduced. So artificial insemination's been around for a long time, but we also have a lot of embryo transfer that's occurring. So dairies now are actually producing a lot of the beef animals. So they'll either take a beef sire and put it on a dairy animal as far as artificial insemination, or sort of like a surrogate cows. They may in fact just be the recipient of an embryo that's completely a beef animal. That might be a Angus cross or a Hereford cross or something like that goes into a Holstein cow. And if you look at the dairy industry, we actually we're at record number high dairy animals. Milk prices aren't great, but it's become almost the byproduct to rearing calves at this point. So from an economic standpoint, and that'll probably correct over the years, but that's where we're at right now.
And you mentioned to me, Aaron, the price of a calf a few years ago compared to today.
Yeah, it's $100 a few years ago you could get a calf. Now they're hundreds, if not in the thousand.
Amazing.
So it's significant, and which impacts treatment decisions, right? When you're talking about treatment decisions, when you have an animal that you didn't pay a lot for because you also weren't expecting to receive a lot for, is a lot different situation than now where the prices are supportive. So it's good for a technology like ours. We have to build it though, so that we can also operate it in lean times and it'll be profitable. So it's good that we're able to do it now, but we have to understand that the economics aren't always going to be as
favorable as today, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So tell us about your path. You started. You got out of college and went to work, and you eventually wound up as an entrepreneur. How does all that happen?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at my career, it's pretty. I'd say pretty cyclical. It's sort of been multinational corporation followed by startup, sort of rinse and repeat a few times. And I've enjoyed both. I guess I've got a lot from both, but I'd say that sort of feeds my soul is sort of the operating in the startup, small company, doing things that haven't been done, that are difficult problems but are worth solving. And thankfully, I've had opportunities in both the large companies and the small companies to develop experiences that have prepared me for different aspects. And so I guess that's one thing I'd say is get all the experience you can, operate things, find people that are doing, there's a lot of interesting people out there, find them and ask questions and
asking questions, yeah,
and listen because
listen
because There's a lot of question asking just to ask the question, and then there's to understand, and that there is a difference. Yeah.
And a lot of students have the idea, well, I want to be an entrepreneur, so I got to get out of college or leave early and go be an entrepreneur, like a tech math prodigy.
Yeah.
But I think what you're going to tell us, and what I've observed, is all the successful entrepreneurs I've known, very successful, typically started out in multinationals or private businesses. Mm-hmm. And how did that help you? How did those experiences help you and get you into a space where you could be an entrepreneur?
One is just observing. So had some really cool opportunities early in my career to observe things and ask questions, challenge paradigms. I'd say, and I challenge my kids, be critical thinkers, question everything, and not question just to be obstinate and annoy your parents or whoever. But I mean, that's a useful trait. But
maybe after they move away.
Yeah, right. Yeah, better than. But I do think being a critical thinker and really,
So tell us what that means. We throw that phrase around here quite a bit. What does that mean for you as an entrepreneur when you got your money and your reputation on the line?
I question everything. I question people's motivations. I question philosophy. I question why do we do things this way and not do it the other way. And honestly, sometimes you just don't know. It's just the way it's kind of how we've arrived at things, and sometimes that's an okay answer. But I think you really need to question, because through that questioning, you sometimes arrive at much better solutions.
Yeah.
And ways of doing things. You also identify problems that you think there's a problem, but that's really a symptom of a bigger issue, right? And so if you can really more understand that fully, then you, I think, gain better insight on how your products might fit, frankly, and that's where we're really trying to be.
That sounds like, to be an entrepreneur, you got to come up with a solution the market doesn't have, and how can you possibly do that without asking a lot of questions, huh?
Yeah, and when you pitch, you start with the problem, but how you define the problem is actually as important as the solution, because, okay. For example, identifying antimicrobial resistance markers in samples from BRD cattle isn't necessarily the solution you would arrive at when you say, my problem is that my cattle are dying from bovine respiratory disease. Actually, where we started was pathogen identification. A quicker way to do a better mousetrap, right? Today, you can send a swab and you can send it to the laboratory, and you can get a PCR result back in a day. If you send it to Iowa State, you can get it in a day. You can do culture and sensitivity slower, mm-hmm. 3 to 5, 7 days maybe. Mm-hmm. So we thought, we'll build a better mousetrap, right? You can do it. It's quick. Tell you. It actually doesn't move the needle. Okay, so now you know what you got. So what? Then what are you going to do? Mm. And the answer is they're going to treat. So that's where we had to really sort of change the mindset. I think then the challenge becomes is that this is a new approach, right? So you have to have people that you ask who we're dealing with. We're dealing with people in their businesses are innovators. They're early adopters. They like to try technology. They like to they like to break things, because we've broken this thing every which. Mm-hmm. I think I told you last night when we met, like, there are 3 components in that hardware device. Only 3 components we haven't changed. Everything's been upgraded. Mm. And it's been upgraded not just because, I want the better version. It's because the version we had didn't adequately address what we need. But we couldn't find that out until we actually got it in the field. Mm-hmm. And so you got to have people that are willing to deal with this thing not working sometimes, right? That's part of being part of this process, is that you get to participate when it fails, when it doesn't work. I get the texts, hey, I just ran this chip. This doesn't look quite right to me. What do you think? And then we can pull out the data, we can pull the imagery, and we can analyze it. And so without that feedback that you get, you think you're mature. You think your technology is a lot more mature than it actually is. So we started this in April, and now now I know we have what we needed to have to move forward, right? But you had no idea unless you did that.
And so of all the networking that's important, you just mentioned another one, which is finding early adopters who are willing to work with you and iterate on the solution.
That's it. Yeah.
So tell us some more tips about entrepreneurs, entrepreneurship. What are the things you learned along the way that we wouldn't have thought of?
Well, I mean, just step back, like you absolutely have to have the support of your family if you have a family and you're at a stage in your career and family and personal life, maybe you have a spouse and children, or that's at least planned, you have to have the support of your family because it's not for everyone. And if you're pursuing things that from a lifestyle standpoint aren't consistent with what the family expects, there's a disconnect there. And so I've been very fortunate that my family's been incredibly supportive. My wife puts up with a lot and has sacrificed a lot in order for us really to pursue these things. So I think that's one. I think getting experiences and just talking to people and there's a lot of one of the things I like about doing these sorts of things is we've had a lot of earlier meetings today and just thinking it expands my horizon on there's a different way of doing things. So I think experience, network, and my bias would be is to go out and build things, do things like a lot of we get out of college and we're like, I want to go work for one of the big 4 consulting firms.
Yeah.
It's hard, as brilliant as you can possibly be, it's really, really, really hard to instruct people on things that you really don't have any real life experience in. And so there's a lot of value in developing that. And I would say do it early in your career when you can and find those companies. You can do it in multinational companies, but you can also do it, it's almost maybe more profitable in some ways to do it in medium or small size companies because those companies you tend to wear a lot of different hats. Maybe less isolation on certain roles and responsibilities, right? So a little bit of an ability to morph back and forth.
Not in silos within a corporation, right?
Right, and so, but if you find yourself in a corporation, find the cool people that are doing the fun things. Yeah. I mean, there's a gentleman, he was head of business development at Elanco. Every Friday we went and got Chinese food and we just talked. He was in Harvard MBA, he was a Purdue guy. His family owned a seed company which was sold to Pioneer years later. But he was fascinating and we still keep in touch. And he had a cool career and so he'd sit and we'd have Chinese food and we'd talk about whatever. But deals, and some of
So he's kind of a mentor.
Was mentor, yeah, and you find people like that, and for different things in life, and soak it up. It's fun.
Fascinating, and it does sound like fun. Aaron, you've helped our young prospective entrepreneurs understand that you got to have a deep understanding of your clients and your industry, and it sounds like a lot of networking along the way, and your experiences of starting out in a more traditional career and then winding up as an entrepreneur, I think is very inspirational for our students. So thank you for coming out today.
Yep, appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Executive Forum Speaker Series. Learn how the Daniels School is building the future of business by visiting us at business.purdue.edu. That's business.purdue.edu.